Hi guys, this was a beautiful swipe taken at Rishi Sunak and his wife on Sky this morning. Wes Streeting, the Shadow Health Secretary, backed up his defence of removing non-dom status if the Labour Party got into power. Now, a non-dom only pays UK tax on money earned in the United Kingdom, but does not pay any tax to the UK on money earned elsewhere, unless they pay that money into a UK bank account. Now, Wes was challenged with the idea that if you begin to tax these multimillionaires and billionaires, they will simply move out of the country. Have a listen to how Streeting debunked that talking point.
Your critics would say that abolishing non-dom status is something of a cheap shot to get at the Prime Minister and his personal circumstances. What is the evidence that it actually would bring in that money? Because some would say that actually the very wealthy will simply take the best advice and move themselves and their money elsewhere and deny it to the Treasury. And also that your plans, yes, you're talking about far more staff members, which would be enormously welcomed in the NHS. But, for example, doctors, getting more doctors through the system, this takes years and years. You're talking solutions that will help in 5 to 10 years' time.
So I'd say a few things in response. I mean, firstly, the figures we've used and the analysis we've used is independent, produced by academics at Warwick University and the London School of Economics. It would generate more than £3 billion. That's more than enough to cover the £1.6 billion that our package would cost. And as for these claims that people would just take their money and go somewhere else, why is it that when it comes to taxing the wealthy, it's always far too difficult, but when it comes to picking the pockets of working people with punitive tax rises, that seems to be the Conservatives' first and last resort? And look, we haven't taken this policy to single out the Prime Minister and his family, actually, but there is a case in point in 10 Downing Street, isn't there, of someone who was a non-dom, now pays their taxes here and hasn't left the country. And I think that would be the case in the vast majority of non-doms too. And while I
Wonderful. So, yeah, like if we tax these, there's always this thing that, well, if we tax the multimillionaires and billionaires, they'll just leave. Well, they're not going to leave. Rishi Sunak's wife didn't leave. So there was a very valuable lesson for people when it comes to non-dom status. But also the point that he raised here about why is it when it comes to taxing the rich, closing loopholes, fighting tax evasion and tax avoidance, it's a mammoth task. It's too expensive. But when it comes to taking money from the poor, taking money from working class people, it's so much easier. Why is that the case? Obviously it's because, and I've said this before, because, well, poor people don't donate to the party. You can't buy a politician if you're on universal credit. You can if you're a multimillionaire or billionaire. And that's why the system needs to change. And I hope that if Labour get into power, they will remove this non-dom status. There's no justification for it. And as we've seen, they will threaten, the millionaires and billionaires will threaten to leave the country. But at the end, if they think that they can still make money in the UK, they will stay in the UK. They always use the same arguments. If you want to increase taxation on multimillionaires and billionaires, they will say, no, if you tax us, we'll leave the country. They can be taxed and they will not leave the country. Back in just after World War II, the United States had a tax rate of about between 90 and 95%. I don't remember exactly. It was somewhere in the range of 90% on the richest in society. Did these people leave the country? No, they didn't. So there's no reason why you shouldn't be removing something as simple as non-dom status. And the fact that the Prime Minister's wife was taking advantage of this should be embarrassing for the Prime Minister. But I know, and he knows, that most people don't really care about that. Or do they? Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.